Before this video starts, I just want to say please do watch the video in its entirety if you're going to make a comment about the A-10C situation, as it's very possible I've already answered or addressed that comment in the video. If you see your comment on screen, no hard feelings, don't worry about it. If it's on screen, it's because more than one person had the same idea as you, and I just wanted to address that. So without further ado, here's the salt mine. Safe to say I really kicked the hornet's nest when it came to talking about the A-10C on the dev server just a couple of videos ago. Got a lot of interesting comments I want to address real quick before we get into what the A-10 actually looks like here on the live server, and spoiler alert, it's pretty much just as I thought it would turn out, because really you don't need an IQ higher than room temperature of an igloo before you realize that 4 9Ms at 11.3 is never going to work. And by work, I mean work for the entire battle rating bracket. There was a lot of angry US mains saying that I'm just coping and it's a bad take, etc. Then there are of course the what about people that just referenced the Su-25 having R-73s at the same battle rating, which I actually addressed in the video and how that's not the same as having 4 9Ms. And they're forgetting about 3 very important things that I mentioned in the video, of course. And it is that both the Su-25 and the A-10 are very slow. They cannot dictate the engagement range. This is a very key detail when we talk about the type of IRCCM both missiles have. One is tracking suspension, one is gate width. Gate width missiles, like the R-73, require very close ranges to actually be strong in the IRCCM department. But given that we've established both aircraft are very slow for their battle rating, and they don't have the ability to dictate the range at which they're going to be launching the R-73s most of the time to actually be strong when it comes to IRCCM. You're usually going to be launching from pretty far away because everyone's going way faster than you, and it gives them plenty of ability to flare just due to the fact that's how gate with IRCCM works. The further the range is, the easier it is to flare. That's not the case with the 9M. The 9M is tracking suspension. It will be just as flare resistant at 3 kilometers as it will at 0.5 kilometers. Okay, not literally just as resistant, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you get the point. And so this lends itself much better to a plane that's going very slow and is going to have a very hard time getting within close range to actually shoot their missiles. And not only that, but the A-10 has double the amount of these better missiles suited for its playstyle at the same battle rating. And then you have LARPers that want the game to be absolutely as realistic as possible, and I'm not going to hate on that desire. If that's how you want your game to be, then so be it, but you're in the wrong market, buddy. This is War Thunder, this is an arcade flight video game. It is not meant to be as uber realistic as possible. The reason War Thunder is so popular is because it walks the line of being realistic but also still a video game, and that is something that people are actually looking for in why they chose War Thunder. So if you don't like that, maybe this isn't the game for you. And then of course segues into the people that are like, just be glad that it does not have AIM-9X. The A-10 carries AIM-9X in real life, so it could in War Thunder. Oh, excuse me, you're so right. I should not be complaining about this overpowered busted missile to have at 11.3 battle rating, because it could have an even more busted missile at 11.3. Lucky us, thank you Gaijin for not adding the AIM-9X into the game. Of course, I really shouldn't have to explain why this doesn't make any sense. Plenty of planes in War Thunder don't have their absolute best armament capabilities. There's tons and tons of aircraft that could have the AIM-9X right now. There's tons of aircraft that could have the AIM-120C, the AIM-120D even maybe, the Python 5 for the Israeli tech tree, the R-73M, and so on, and they're not in the game. Why are they not in the game? Because balance. This is a video game. The time will come probably where they do try to implement weapons like that into the game, and it may or may not be fun. Gaijin is going to try to make it realistic because that's still somewhat the point of War Thunder. They're going to try to make it as realistic as possible. At the same time, if you can't flare the missile at all, or if you can't notch the missile at all, it's not going to be enjoyable for most people. So yes, obviously we don't have AIM-9Xs in the game, and that's not any kind of reason to say that the AIM-9M belongs on the A-10. And no hate at all to Scudeli, my man. I do appreciate you, long-time supporter of the channel. He did bring up a good point in the comments saying that it is just the dev server. They said that over and over, that the BRs could change, and I understand that, However, I've been around way too long to actually trust Gaijin to make appropriate changes on the dev server before pushing said subject onto the live server. This has happened many times where a broken plane or a broken missile or something is unfinished. The dev server is subject to change, don't worry, and then it never changes. This is pretty par for the course. And so I made that video to bring awareness to the issue, because if we don't kick and scream before it gets added to the live server, there's a very good chance that they're not going to change it, and that's exactly what happened. They didn't change it. But the comments weren't all bad, and by bad I don't mean like I'm mad at anyone, like that's not what this video is about. There was a lot more comments that were disagreeing with me, and they did it in a completely respectful manner, which is fine. Even the comments I showcased in this video were plenty respectful, and you're allowed to disagree. I'm not trying to come at anybody necessarily in particular for thinking this way. You're entitled to your opinion, I'm entitled to my opinion, but I'm going to try to prove to you why my opinion's more right than yours. But anyways, comments like these I thought were particularly refreshing because it does sum up the entire problem with the A-10 pretty much perfectly. And right about now, I want to address the gameplay you guys have been watching in the background. Oh, you're just cherry picking your high kill A-10 games to try to prove your point. While these are some of the more interesting A-10 games I had while recording for this video, this is by no means cherry picked results. I'm going to show you the A-10 stats right now. I'm usually not one to show stats because there's a lot to stats and a lot of it that doesn't mean anything in the end of the day. But when it comes to an attacker, I think this is worth noting. Most of you out there probably are familiar with the KD, the kill to death ratio, and that on my A-10C is 5.66 at the time of recording, and this is a ground strike aircraft. But KD doesn't really mean that much in War Thunder. There's a lot of ways you can manipulate it. You can kill AI, which I didn't do, but you could do that. You could play really passively and then just RTB and J out after you get a kill or two every game. Yeah, you could do that too, and these are things that people actually do because they really care about their KD. I, of course, did not do this, but I do recognize that KD is not a very useful stat in RRB. It is a little bit telling, you know, if somebody has a really negative KD, sure, they're probably not that good. If their KD is above 1.5 or 2, they're probably good, and that's as far as I look into it. KB, on the other hand, is much more telling of an individual's player's skill than KD is. A lot of you probably are not familiar with kills per battle. So you saw my kills per battle is 2.68. To give you a perspective of just how crazy a 2.6 kill per battle is, let me show you the leaderboards for RRB. This is page 1 of the kills per battle leaderboard in RRB. You can see the highest is a 5.23, and there's 3 kills per battle stats above a 4.0. Now, what if I told you that most of this page is pretty much meaningless, especially the top half, because pretty much all of these players are going to be KB farming or taking planes in lower battle ratings like the P-39N, the HE-100, the Yak-2 Kebab or whatever it is, the BB-7 or BB-1. They take planes like this as an experienced War Thunder veteran and absolutely club brand new players in the game. And even doing that, it's still difficult to get a 4 and 5 KB. That's pretty crazy even when you're clubbing and farming for it. But it's not very valid when comparing player skill or planes. If we go on over to page 2 of the leaderboards, we can see how quickly KB drops because it is an extremely exponential stat on the leaderboard. The second page of top RRB players is already below a 3.0, and a 3.0 is about as high as I would care to look into and say, yeah, this guy's probably not just KB farming. So this page I could pretty confidently say is legitimately some of the better RRB players in the game. Probably the best even. And now if we go to one more page over, on page 3, we see the kill per battle stat of my A-10 at 2.68. That means if I could make every plane that I've ever touched as good and as effective as I can make this A-10C right now in War Thunder, I would be a top 70 RRB player. Just to clarify, you did see the 1.78 stat on my actual name on the bottom of those leaderboards. That's my overall KB as my entire player card. That's not my A-10 specific KB. To calculate the KB of a single aircraft, you have to take your aircraft destroyed number, divide it by the total number of battles you've played in it, and there you go. You have KB, and for me, in the A-10, that's 2.68, putting me in the top 70 of RRB if I could do that for every single plane, but of course, I can pretty much only do that for the A-10. It's just too much of a menace for the enemy team to deal with. Yes, it's really slow. Yes, if it's the last plane alive, as you're going to see in this clip right here, it's easy to deal with. If all you have to focus on is an A-10C, it's absolutely not the end of the world. The problem is, this is War Thunder, this is 16 versus 16, it's a team game, and you are not only going to be focusing on A-10s. Having the 4.9Ms, having that 3.5, maybe even 4 kilometer range, depending on aspects and speeds and all that, of IRCCM against planes that have less than 60 countermeasures, that have supersonic planes also slinging missiles at them from many other directions, or God forbid multiple A-10Cs in your game slinging AIM-9Ms at you from 2 or 3 different directions, you are cooked. There's nothing you can do about that situation. Sure, you can just run away, sure you can play passive, you can do everything you can to avoid the A-10s, but if you're doing that, you're probably not winning the game. You're probably giving the A-10's teammates massive advantages on you when it comes to engaging you, and it's just not fun for anyone. They ruin the battle rating bracket, and they need to go up. It's not as big of a deal when you have a million flares on all of the higher tier planes, and if you do get yourself in an unfortunate situation where an A-10 gets an AIM-9M off of you, you can reliably flare that away and still have plenty of flares left over to deal with the rest of the team that is inevitably also going to be chasing you, that you can't just simply run away from. The fact of the matter is, the A-10 with 4.9Ms is too hard to kill because you can't just missile it. It's got an infinite amount of countermeasures. It requires too many resources on your end, and it requires just too much time. You have to either fly away from it, which is draining your time. It's time you can't actually dictate the match, or you're going to have to spend forever trying to just flare away all of its 9Ms, bait its missiles out, and then you can go in for a kill with your guns because, like I said, you're not going to be killing this thing with missiles. For those of you who have watched this video in its entirety, thank you. I do appreciate it. And also, if you've held off on commenting until you've heard all of my points, I also really appreciate that. And if the A-10 being on the live server now for real has changed your mind about it, let me know. If you still disagree with me, also let me know in the comments. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you later.